Hello, I'm Ross, but he's just said that. So, and I hear this about Lord HawHaw, he said that as well. So, Lord HawHaw, this talks kind of down to my mother. My mother was brought up during the war, and she said that they listened to the radio every night, and the radio was the thing in those days. It was the newest media technology. It was quite new, but everyone had one. So no one really knew what the effect could be of radio, and people didn't really know what propaganda use it could serve. They knew about newspapers, they knew about songs and the musical, but they weren't sure about radio. Everyone in Britain during the war either listened to this man that we're about to listen to, or knew people who did. It was broadcast by the Germans to us throughout the war. So, Ryan, if you could just...
See if this works.
See if this works.
Germany calling, Germany calling, Germany calling. One would describe at the height of cynicism the message sent by the First Lord of the Admiralty to the captain of the British destroyer Cossack, congratulating him on his gallant rescue efforts. Only a person of Mr. Churchill's mentality could congratulate anybody, first on shooting unarmed men, and secondly, on flagrantly violating Norwegian neutrality.
There you go. We were expecting someone who sounded like Adolf Hitler or Joseph Goebbels, men who visibly frothed at the mouth when they were speaking. This bastard sounded like one of us. And this is what got people. Didn't know how to deal with him. Didn't know who he was. He was anonymous at first. The name Lord HawHaw was actually given to him by the Daily Express. I'll come to that later. So who was he? Well, in 1941, he came out on air, so to speak, and announced that he was a man called William Joyce. This fellow. Now, William Joyce was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1906, so technically he was an American. But he was born to an English mother and an Irish father. They'd met in Ireland, moved to seek their fortune, and in 1909 they moved back to Ireland just in time for World War I, and just in time for the Irish War of Independence. Now, William was half English, half Irish. He identified with the English side, and actually many Irish people did identify with the Empire. His family were Empire loyalists. Well, this wasn't an issue to a degree. It became a real issue with the War of Independence. And here we have British Army officers searching a suspected IRA gunman. And William, even though he's very young, he's a school kid, is suspected of passing information to the British Army. And an Irish Catholic priest is suspected of being killed because of this information. You've got a thing going on here. You've got a school kid suspected of not killing people but passing on information. Catholic priest was suspected of passing on information to the IRA. And for that, the Irish father, Father Griffin, was shot by the Black and Tans, auxiliary British troops, and William was accused of having handed over information. So the IRA put a price on his head, and a gunman is sent to pick him off on the way home from school. William's only 16 at this point. Father suspects that someone's amiss and tells William to go home a different way from school. The gunman has no target and puts away his gun. Apparently wasn't that unhappy about the process, but the IRA let it be known that young William is a dead schoolboy if he stays in Ireland. So his parents pack him on the mail boat to England. He joins the British Army, and he joins the British Army to go and reclaim Ireland for his people. Unfortunately, the British Army isn't so keen on this idea. After the First World War, after the War of Independence, quite frankly, the British Army's kind of had enough of that. And William's really overt patriotism just is out of step with a country that's been through the Great War and suffered as it has. A sort of jingoistic go-to-war patriotism doesn't play really well. You might think that's odd amongst the soldiers, but it's actually the soldiers who've been doing the fighting. They know what's involved in what William wants to do, and they are not that interested. And, well, they begin to take the piss out of him. They know that William is so patriotic that if he hears anyone singing, say, the national anthem, he's up there, standing attention, upright, bolt upright like this. So they start singing it when they're in bed in the barracks. William's straight up there, like that, and naked, and they just, well, when one person stops, someone else starts. Starts happening in the showers. People have got this on the parade ground, so someone will just start quietly whistling it. Suddenly there's William Joyce standing to attention like this. This is getting on everyone's nerves. But there's a solution to this problem, and the solution is William's so keen, as a 16-year-old, he's lied about his age to get to the army, that he puts on his fatigues when they're damp, gets rheumatic fever, sent to the hospital. The hospital checks his age, finds out he's underage, can't join up. So, William is chucked out of the British Army. He then decides to become a student, goes to London, gets involved in student politics like many do. Given his background with Ireland and the Union, it's kind of natural. He drifts towards the British Conservative and Unionist Party and starts doing campaigning for them. There's a lot to do. In 1922, 1923 and 1924, Britain has a general election. That's one a year. We think we've had it bad, rough recently. Forget it. Every year. General strike's only 2 years away. William is on the door for Mr. Jack Lazarus, who's candidate in Lambeth. Now, Lambeth is a hotbed of left-wing politics. Its MP is an Indian gentleman, and he is not an Empire loyalist. He is actually campaigning against the British Empire, and he is the Labour MP for Lambeth. William goes to the most antagonistic place to do his campaigning, and he pays the price. William's on the door for Jack Lazarus when a bunch of communist activists storm the building. Get in, William gets in the way. A very common weapon in the whole of the East End, inner London at the time, was the classic barber's razor. And what happened to William was he was cut from here to here, wide open, missed his artery by a whisker. That's the bandage. He was in hospital for about 2 to 3 weeks. Does this go backwards? Yeah. That's the scar. There you go. Obviously marked for life. There's no way you're getting away from that. William took it quite well once he'd recovered. Christened it the Lambeth Honour, in some sort of medieval knightly manner. Once he'd recovered enough to get out of hospital, he went to the Cenotaph on Remembrance Day, bumped into Heather Barr, another student. He nearly fainted. She took him home. They fell in love, and they got married. And William quietened down a bit. Went to Birkbeck College in London, a part-time college. He's a poor lad. He's not wealthy. Has to work. Gets himself a first in English and history. And things are looking up for William at this point. He's got a first. His tutors regard him as a bit odd and politically rather strange. But he is undeniably clever. He's on course for postgraduate work and that sort of thing. But it's a bit quiet for William. William was in Ireland. William stood out. And I think William always really wanted, primarily above anything else, to stand out. And politics was getting more radical. The centre was beginning to thin down in popularity, and the extremes were coming up, communism and its reaction, fascism. And especially when you have the depression of the 30s, it gets worse. They get more extreme. A Labour MP by the name of Oswald Mosley founds his own party, the New Party. That fails. So Mosley looks to Italy and Mussolini, who's been in power for 10 years, and founds a fascist party on the basis of Mussolini's party. And William Joyce. And these are the black shirts. And there you see is William. Now, as you can see, it's really very much shorter than the rest of them. That rheumatic fever just stopped his growth dead at 16. They christened him the Mighty Atom. And William could speak. William toured the country, giving speeches that lasted for 2-3 hours. I promise this won't go as long, don't worry. But he could speak, he was clever, he knew his stuff, he liked controversy, he also liked to fight. These meetings were quite rough. So if someone wanted to charge the stage, this is a man who's been slashed a if you come at him with just your fists, he was not worried. He was a superb speaker by the standards of the time, and the popularity of the British Union of Fascists grew very much with his help. It also grew with the help of headlines like that. This is the Daily Mail from January 1934. Viscount Robert is the owner of the Daily Mail, and you can read the headline. It's basically it's a rallying call for the British Union of Fascists. Articles like this also ran in the Daily Mirror, because Rothermere owned the Daily Mirror as well. So that's a curious inheritance for the Daily Mirror, but there we are. Whether the Daily Mail's changed that much is open to opinion. The fascists, with support like this, have a massive rise in popularity. 50,000 members they're claiming, and MI5 kind of reckon that private reports that between 40 and 50,000 was probably about right. Communist Party at this time, to give you an idea, 6,000. So massive surge in popularity. William has divorced his first wife, and he meets at a meeting a woman called Margaret White. Margaret White had been tempted by the Communist Party, but she saw William Joyce speak and went over to the black shirts. This sounds weird. Extremist politics, there was much, people tended to change, and if they changed from one, they would go all the other way to the other side. The one thing they have in common, perhaps, is a contempt for parliamentary democracy. Neither the communists nor the fascists thought this was worth anything. Mosley wanted rid of it, so the communists. So, William's doing all right at this point. He's got a new wife, he's on a wage, he's very popular, in meetings at least, but he doesn't get on with Mosley, because Mosley sees him as a rival. And also William, perhaps because of this attack in Lambeth, who he blamed on communist Jews, is viciously anti-Semitic. Viciously. There's no getting away from that. We're talking, articles where he, suggests they should hang from lampposts. This is in the 30s. This is a nasty set of policies he's promoting. Mosley was not a pleasant man, but his politics were more the Mussolini variety, and there's a split there. So there's a split politically, and there's a split personally. They don't like each other. Mosley's very, very posh. Joyce is not at all. And basically, William Joyce wants to be leader. So when the BUF's popularity begins to dip in 36, 37, and the money dries up from Germany and Italy, because the party was funded by Mussolini and Hitler, Mosley sacks most of his staff, and funny enough, William Joyce is one of the first ones to go. So, at this point, William, if you think about it, has been exiled by the IRA, he's been kicked out of the British Army, he's nearly been killed by the communists, he's been kicked out of the Tory party as well, and he's been sacked by the fascists. And he's only 31. He really has managed to alienate people that you wouldn't think, people you might think would be desperate for friends. He founds his own party. The British, hang on a minute, it is so obscure, I have actually had to write that one down, I do apologise. It was called, what was it called? The National League. Worth waiting for, wasn't it? Sorry, it was called the National League. And this with the National League, William gets to really revel in his Hitler idolatry. He worshipped Hitler, basically. Forget Mussolini, Hitler's the way. And he really took this to a very, very, very extreme degree. This is William Joyce, dressed as Hitler, really. Basically, there's no getting away from it. It's the Hitler moustache and the thing like this. This is how far the idol worship went. It didn't work. His brave new party, if the BUF managed, MI5 reckoned about 40 to 50,000 members, William's new party topped out at under 300 members. You could probably get them in one room. And it goes broke. So by 1939, William has, as we've seen, isolated all these people. He has no friends left, really, and war is obviously coming. Everyone knows war's coming. I say he's isolated all his friends. William had passed information to people in MI5 about the BUF, the British Unionist Fascists, in an effort to undermine people like Mosley. As a result, he had contacts in MI5. One of them phoned him up and said, when the war comes, which it is, you will be interned. There's no question about it. You won't be put on trial, you won't be shot, but you won't be put on trial. You will just simply put in prison. He's told this in August. August 26th, William and Margaret, his wife, pack their bags and get on the boat train from Victoria to Berlin. And even though it's that close to war, there is still a boat train that will take you all the way. You know, the one ticket, off you go. He's waved off by his mother, the same mother who had waved him off from the docks in Ireland in 1921 when he was 16. He gets to Berlin on the 28th. On the 3rd, it's the 1st of September, Germany invades Poland. Poland invades Germany, sorry. On the 3rd of September, Britain declares war. And the borders go down. Now, William always claimed that this leap across the ocean, the North Sea, had been unplanned. If it had been, it's quite a remarkable turnaround because he gets there on the 26th, war's declared on the 3rd. William makes his first broadcast to England on the 6th of September. So if he did go there with no idea of what to do, he was remarkably good at finding a job very quickly with the top broadcaster in Germany. He used to say, maybe William had lost all his friends in Britain, but he'd certainly kept a few over the way. So, he's broadcasting that peculiarly English voice. He doesn't sound like a phoning fascist orator. He sounds, frankly, most of them thought he was some sort of Oxford Don, you know, who'd gone rogue. Who was he? They didn't know. He didn't come out on air for a couple of years. And he was being very good. And the BBC couldn't cope. The BBC was full of very stuffed shirts who talked, this is London, and that sort of thing, as you heard. William, by today's standards, is a fairly stuffed shirt, but actually for them, he was very laid back. Just imagine him with a glass of sherry being rather smug about what was going on. And of course, it was all going very well for the Germans. He had a lot to work with. So, the Home Office thought, what do we do? Do we ban him? Ban people from listening? And they thought, well, that's well, it goes against the whole point of the war, doesn't it? Said one person, and they all agreed and said, well, what's the point? How would you do it? Every house has got a radio. You can't stop them, really. So, they went to the other thing. They thought, we'll make fun of him. And they asked a couple of journalists in the Daily Express to cultivate a character. They didn't know his name, but they went with the voice, which sounded quite posh, a bit of a drawl, like that. And they imagined him as a posh bounder, sort of chap who had done a bit of time for embezzlement, perhaps, but you know, was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And they came up with the name of Lord HawHaw. And then they got a cartoonist to give him an image. And this is what they came up with. Chap in tweeds, monocle, quite posh, giving forth, feeling awfully angry. And someone said that he reminded them of, say, Bertie Wooster, the P.G. Wodehouse character, gone bad. And that's pretty much what they stuck with. They gave him a Lady HawHaw. This is what William Joyce, his wife, did some broadcasting, and they characterised her like this. She wouldn't like this at all, but you know, she's in her riding pinks, terribly posh. The Express was a lower middle class paper, and it played on class prejudices against the ruling class, who many of them had identified with the fascists. So it was actually quite cleverly done. This is how HawHaw presents Hitler, as far as the Express is concerned. He's got his halo, he's got his wings, he's an angel. He loves England. Hitler, this is a direct quote incident from HawHaw. Herr Hitler loves you. He's your best friend. With your own country in ruins, with your leaders discredited and in flight, with hunger, rioting and civil war in your midst, why hold out any longer? The Führer extends the hand of friendship. Grasp it, British people, before he blows you off the face of the earth. So, it's affable, yet it's threatening. Because HawHaw had toured the country, he did Eastbourne, he did Worthing, he did Brighton, he went up to Dumfries, he did Bodmin, he went everywhere in the 30s speaking. He did more of a tour than any actor. He knew the towns, he knew the landmarks. I don't know, what's the big landmark in Eastbourne? Monkey Head.
Beachy Head.
Beachy Head, or the pier, you have pier, don't you?
Yes.
He would mention your pier. He would mention the clock tower in Brighton. He would mention the fact that these could not be saved from the Luftwaffe, the might of the Luftwaffe, which seemed to rule supreme for many long months. People got it into their head that when he mentioned your town, he was saying that you were next. And people actually thought that he had said that. He never did. They checked, but it got into people's head. And of course, he wasn't likely to. The Luftwaffe wasn't really going to thank him for telling us the travel plans. But people thought that's why he was frightening, I think. That's why he was so frightening. So they needed to take the mick out of him with Lady HawHaw, Joseph Goebbels, his boss, looking very cross. Goebbels is shouting the 6 phones at once. It's not working. That's the message. Taking a piss out of Hermann Goering. That's Himmler. This is actually the chief Nazi propagandist, Streicher, Julius Streicher. So the humour's there, and this is what it became. It's a wanted poster, but it's a comedy wanted poster. By 41, 42, he's a busted flush really. He's got good news to work with. It's all bad news, and he spends more and more time having to justify what's going wrong with the war, rather than what's going right. He tries to play on British fears of America and Russia taking over as world powers, but that's pretty much all he can do. And when, for instance, a whole German army surrenders at Stalingrad, HawHaw has to go on air and make that sound like a good thing. And you just can't. We had that in the Iraq War with Comical Ali, the propaganda minister, who at first you could listen to him, but then actually when he's giving interviews and bombs are exploding in the next street, the credibility just goes. This is propaganda's weakness. So by the end of the war, he broadcasts for the whole 4 or 5 years, and he's exhausted. He writes all his own material. He does all the voices. He writes sketches. It's an amazing output. He's devoted to Hitler throughout. He signs off, audibly drunk, on air, with a final flourish of Heil Hitler and farewell, and then there's a sort of radio silence as the mic is dropped. Goes into hiding, but of course, there are some pictures of him, but the real thing is the voice. And one day, in 46, late 45, 2 British officers are taking a walk in a German wood near Flensburg. They're picking up wood actually for the fire, it's very cold. And there's a chap wandering through the woods. And he actually comes up to them and he speaks fluent English. Well, they don't know much about that, there's plenty of people who do. And he starts talking to them about the flora and fauna of the German woods and how underappreciated it is. And as British officers, they should really appreciate this and perhaps send on the information to their troops who no doubt enjoy the benefits of such education. And these 2 British officers are looking at each other, he's very odd, isn't he odd? And one of them goes, is there something familiar about that voice? And the other one goes, there is rather. And one of them says, excuse me, sorry to interrupt, but you wouldn't be Lord HawHaw, would you? And William Joyce says, no. He's got false papers, and he reaches for the false papers. Unfortunately, the officers think he's reaching for a gun. So quick as a flash, one of the British officers grabs his Webley service revolver and shoots him. William's turning at the time to reach for the papers out of his jacket pocket. So the British officer, not being the best shot in the world, doesn't get in here, or even here, gets in here. Right in the arse. William Joyce is only shot once, but he has 4 wounds. 2 entry wounds, 2 exit wounds, 1 in each buttock. Immediately cops to who he is, and he is arrested. And here is William, under arrest in a British Army lorry. It's a bit dark here, the contrast. Can you see that thing there? That's the barrel of a Scuddy's gun, because he's been crouched over. They're not taking any chances. The reason William is lying down in the pyjamas is because he's been shot in the arse and can't move. So he was stuck as a prisoner. We had Lady HawHaw, didn't we? That's what she was portrayed as. She was arrested the same day. That's actually what she looked like. She looks scared, really. She was a vicious fascist, anti-Semite. Which you can just see the fear there, really, can't you, in the eyes. People were surprised when he turned up here. because they were expecting this very sinister body to go with a sinister voice, and what they found was, as we've seen, a very short, very slight man. The German economy had been starved out, so they were very, very skinny when they turned up, very slight. And I think people were quite stunned by how scary this very insignificant figure was. This didn't provoke sympathy. I think it rather provoked the opposite, a rage at the fact that someone so puny and so insignificant had evoked such fear. And the blood was up. He was actually captured, I said late 45, actually it was quite early. He was captured just after the surrender and everything was at the top of the range. He was brought back. As he was brought back, he was so famous, he signed his autograph for one of the men who was detailed to bring him over. That's how famous he was. This is a traitor and a Nazi, someone still wanted his autograph. And he put, my thoughts are deep emotions as I crossed the white cliffs of Dover in a plane with dear old England on the lee. For all the fact that he was a traitor, he still loved this country, even though actually he was technically an American. But he brought back, and the Daily Mail, those took place, of course, changed its tune on the whole thing and is very, very keen on the whole process. He said he's ready for all the tower, because that's where traitors go. He wasn't put in the tower. That was a bit old-fashioned, but that's where people thought that the condemned traitors were sent, and a lot of them thought they were shot by fire squad. They weren't. But anyway, his date with the hanging draws near. They're very keen on this. Then the technical problem arises. He's been arraigned on treason. But William Joyce was born in Brooklyn, New York. He was born in Brooklyn to two people who'd taken American citizenship. They hadn't kept it, but they'd taken it. He had got a British passport, but he got it under false pretenses. He'd said he was born in Ireland when it was part of the Empire, which he hadn't been. So actually, he was not entitled to the passport. So some people felt, annoying as it was, that rather than being had up on a charge of treason, he should have been had up on a charge of gaining a passport under false pretences. The fine for which was, I think, 4 shillings and sixpence. What he was facing was a considerably more hefty punishment. He was found guilty in 3 minutes of his trial. His trial and his peers obviously gave it short shrift. His appeal lasted a week, and then he appealed to the House of Lords. Now, William had always wanted to be in politics. He always wanted to be at the top table, and he was genuinely chuffed to be in the House of Lords. He was actually taken there. He was there as the defendant, but it didn't matter. He was visibly delighted to be there. I think he knew the result before it came out. Actually, one Law Lord out of 5 dissented and felt that the issue of his actual technical citizenship mattered. What he was done on was a technical form of treason, which is having received the protection of His Majesty and thus owing allegiance to him. It was that passport. That passport, if you look in front of you, still says Her Majesty's Secretary of State requests and requires that you give the bearer this such protection and help as is necessary. And this is technically what he was found guilty of. William Joyce went to the gallows on the 3rd of January 1946, before any of the Nuremberg men did. He was buried in Pentonville. But years later, his daughter got a campaign to get him disinterred. And his body in 1977 was taken out of the grave, put in a plane, flown over to Galway, where he'd grown up. He never claimed to be Irish, but he'd grown up there, and his daughter identified as Irish. And he was buried in Bowmore Cemetery. He had a Protestant mother, Catholic father, so the compromise was he was born in Bowmore Cemetery's Protestant cemetery, but he was buried by a Catholic priest. And that was the end of William Joyce, buried by his daughter. Thank you.
Very, very much, Ross. I had previously heard of Lord HawHaw in the little attention I paid in my history classes at school. I had no idea it was actually genuinely English, Irish, American. Who's to say? I actually completely believed he was a German propaganda creation. So I had no idea. Does anyone have any questions about Ross's talk? Please.
I'm going to get told off if you don't know the answer to it. What happened to his wife? She was arrested, but...
Margaret, this is curious. They'd taken German citizenship. She was arrested, and she'd done broadcasts, and she'd taken German citizenship during wartime, which is reasonable. But there wasn't really very much evidence, and they were trying an awful lot of people. So actually, she never went to trial. She applied to go and live in Ireland, but the Irish government really didn't. It's pretty an awkward situation, and apparently her application for residency was just simply lost. The Americans didn't want to know either, but the Irish just simply went, "Oh, we've lost the papers." And everyone went, "Yeah, fair enough." She ended up living in Germany, because she was still technically German, deeply embarrassed the German authorities, but they had a lot of things to cope with. This was a minor concern. She died in 1977. Her nieces and nephews used to call them their German Auntie Margaret. His first wife married another fascist who was a stepfather to his two daughters, one of which got him remarried.
Any other questions for Ross?
Why are you interested? Where did you pick up this? What was your passion for?
I'm interested in him because of the thing about his nationality. When my mother said that he was scary and I listened to him, it sounds like an Englishman. And then I heard that he was an Irishman. I thought, oh, I see. There's a lot of resentment after the War of Independence and all the sufferings of the Irish people. I can see. The fact that it turns out that this is not that at all. It's an empire loyalist who just thinks Britain's gone the wrong way and therefore he can save them by going over to Nazi Germany. It just seemed to me a fascinating personal story. I have a friend who's half English, half Irish. My mother was, he identifies as Irish. My mother was Liverpool Irish, but if you called her anything other than English, she would have ripped your throat out. So you have this thing about national identity and which one you pick and how much that matters. And we thought that was the makings of a good show, so we got the show about it. Also, I just think there's that last broadcast where he's ordering the job. I could have taken it up, and it's just too long, too rambling, too miserable, but also too funny. Is quite something. It's a personal side of it like that. Got me going.
That was your question as well, right? Okay. Ruth Ann?
You might not, I don't know if anyone know the answer to this because of it being in history, but some of the things that is coming out about him sort of makes me think of something with Asperger's syndrome, something like that. Because the whole always standing up and that having to be a separate.
Yes.
And and also the whole the flora and fauna and ownership. There's moments there where an almost like on spectrum personality comes through.
This
I
occurred to
don't know
me.
if you could.
Yeah, no, I picked this up when we were reading about him. He used to say to his first wife, he would say, "Let's go to a party." And he says, "No point going to parties." And she said, "Why?" She said, "I already know what people are going to say." Which is quite an Asperger's sort of thing to say, that presumption of I do think, actually, yes, he was on the spectrum. The almost encyclopedic knowledge of virtually everything. And one of the first things he does when he gets to Germany is he delivers a 24-page economic essay to the head of the German economy on how they should successfully run a wartime economy. That's the first thing he does when he gets there. This guy's running the German economy, but Joyce thinks he knows better. There's quite a lot of things that strike me as being probably on the spectrum, yeah. A genuinely odd man.
Any other questions for Ross? In that case, let's give him a huge round of applause.